Good morning. Wednesday morning. It has already been a beautiful morning here in Santa Monica. Already took a walk down to the beach and the farmers market, and I'm trying to send sunshiny vibes to everybody who is on the East Coast, in the Midwest. I'm so happy this morning to introduce everybody to Aaron Greenberg, who is a PhD from Northwestern University and has such an interesting story to tell about other people's biographies. He writes biographies for people who contract him to tell their life stories. And the book that we'll be talking about this morning is just amazing. So welcome everybody. Good morning. Hi Mary. Hi Robin. Hi Alyssa. It's so nice to see everybody here. Hi Liz. And I'm going to bring Aaron on. I see he's here, which makes me really excited. Let's see. Here we go. Lots going on in the Would You Hide Me world right now. We have so many events coming up in the next week. Hello, good morning.
Morning.
It's so nice to meet you.
Likewise, I've enjoyed watching all of your previous banter. Yeah.
So we shoot from the hip over here, right?
Right. I liked it.
Absolutely, nothing formal. Okay, so we have to start the morning with the connection. I know your aunt. I know your Aunt Stacy. Did she tell you?
I heard you went to high school together.
We went to high school together. We were in the same advisory for 4 years. So every morning I got to see your aunt every single morning of 4 years of high school. And we haven't been in touch in all those years. And I get a ping from her on Facebook or Instagram. I can't remember which platform, but she's like, "You're interviewing my nephew." And I said, "Oh my God, that makes me feel so old."
Hopefully she'll tune in at some point or
I hope so. I hope so. Well, what a treat. What a pleasure. And so let's just start at the super very beginning. We clearly share this Chicago history and the northern suburbs of Chicago history. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Northbrook.
You were in Northbrook, and so you went to Northbrook High School.
GBN, yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. And so that's okay. I'll still like you, even though you didn't go New Trier. That's all right. But then, did you go directly to Northwestern after high school? What did you do next?
No, as much as I would have loved to jump straight to the PhD, I had to first get an undergraduate degree at the University of Wisconsin, Madison. So I am a lifelong Midwesterner. So did an undergrad at Madison, Wisconsin. Took a year off to teach in France, and then 7 years in Evanston at beautiful Northwestern.
Nice. That's so nice. So when I'm asking these questions because I'm just so curious to know how you got to the point where you got to be able to interview someone like Magda Priest. And I understand the story from synagogue and all that, and we'll tell the audience about that in a second. But so at Madison, what did you study at Madison?
I studied languages. I was an English major and studied Spanish, French, and German because I didn't listen to what my elders said would get me a job after. And I think, right.
You and me both.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of just pursued my heart, to use a cliche, and studied literature and language, and that led me after various digressions to where I am today at Biograph, which really does feel like a kind of culmination and something that I was preparing for all along without knowing it.
Right. I think we all kind of prepare for all these things in life that we have no idea are ever going to manifest. Hence, Banter with Beth. I mean, this came out of nowhere. But actually it didn't. And so we take these steps in our lives and we don't really realize why we're doing it. But if we trust that we're doing it for a reason, it all kind of comes together. So Biograph, you founded with your brother. And how many years ago did you get, what was the first publication you did? And when did you guys open your doors?
Yeah, we're approaching the 3-year anniversary. So we're still in our infancy, but I think we've accomplished a lot in the last 3 years. one of the things I'm most proud of is you hear in academic circles buzzwords like interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary. How can an engineer and a finance person possibly have anything productive to say to a Shakespearean? And I'm very proud of Biograph as a case study of how not only is it possible, but it's actually ideal to collaborate across different disciplines. Although, of course, as a family business, as a co-founder with my brother, we certainly have a foundation of common ground, but could not be more different in terms of our career and professional trajectories.
And so are you guys both doing Biograph full time?
Yeah, we are. Whereas this may seem more of a kind of predictable or safer choice for me, just as a scholar, I guess I was always comfortable with.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. I'm sorry. I'm going to sneeze, and I'm not going to sneeze on camera. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Alyssa, banter or patter or something. Hang on 1 second.
Oh, I see Stacy.
Okay. Isn't live? Isn't Instagram Live just so fun?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to sneeze on it right into your face and into everybody's face. I'm so sorry. Okay, so Biograph. Back to Biograph.
So I don't know if you heard. I see Stacy. Stacy's joined us. Hi, Alyssa.
Oh, good. Good morning, Stacy.
So what was I pontificating about Biograph? That I think we're exemplary. We're an example of interdisciplinary collaboration. I'm particularly proud of that. So we opened our doors about 3 years ago, and our first publication was a book called Sam's Tavern, about and it sort of pained us to have to tell our own story at first, because that's not the business we got into. We wanted to help others tell their stories, but we needed a first client, and who better than ourselves. So we told the story of our maternal great grandparents, and who had a kind of an adventurous history after the previous generation escaped the pogroms in Russia, the so-called storms of the South, and made it to the west side of Chicago, where my maternal great grandparents started a saloon, a tavern, at Armitage and Kilbourne. And there's a lot of,
I love it,
adventures, including my grandmother getting kidnapped. And anyway, we tell that story as just sort of proof of concept, to show even when in cases where you don't necessarily have all of the subjects of the story to interview, which is certainly relevant in terms of Holocaust memoirs, that there's still a lot that you can do with a little bit of primary source material. So that was our first entrance into the world of publication, and soon we found that we were doing all the things that publishers do, and before we realized that we sort of embraced that role as bookmakers and publishers. From really one of the things that differentiates us, we do everything from conceiving an idea to all the way through publication.
Right, which is amazing. That's incredible. And then before we launch into the story about Magda, you say on, or at least one of the websites I was on is about you, that you were teaching longevity in the medical school at Northwestern. Explain that.
That does require some explaining.
It's fascinating. It's just incredible.
Thank you. So this is from my research, my dissertation, which is somewhere up there. It's called Early Modern Matters of Life and Death. So I focused on the Renaissance, and in short, my dissertation looked into the meaning of life from all different angles: philosophical, religious, political, scientific. What did Shakespeare and contemporaries mean when they used that that highly charged word, life? And one of the chapters is on the history of life prolongation. So very briefly, if you go back to antiquity, you have Hippocrates saying life is short, art is long. And for many centuries, that was just a sort of ethical reality. Life is short, let's figure out how to deal with it. Then in the 17th century, with forebears of the scientific revolution, forerunners like Francis Bacon, was writing a treatise called The History of Life and Death on life prolongation. For the first time, people are saying, actually, we may be able to prolong our lives, but should we? Is that against the will of God? If we're all trying to get to heaven, isn't that a sin to prolong our earthly lives? And there's a whole very interesting culture that springs up around ethical and scientific and literary ideas about life prolongation. And I had this really awesome opportunity to teach at the Feinberg School, Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine, in what was then called and has been in various iterations called the Medical Humanities and Bioethics program. And now I believe it's a center, which suggests that it's a growing field. But it's not just about bedside manner, teaching medical students and residents Shakespeare so that they can be more empathic. It is about that, but it's also really grounded in this truth that you can't really be a good anything if you're not well-rounded. You can't be a good physician or a caregiver if you don't know. In our current environment of medical discourse, there's a strong current of prolonging life at all costs. So it's very valuable, I believe, to have those conversations with practitioners about, they didn't always think that prolonging life at all costs was the ultimate good. So
right. Well, what's so fascinating to me about it specifically is that what you're doing with your writing and with Biograph is you are prolonging the legacy of a life, and you are taking, whether someone's alive or not, you're leaving something for to remain, permanently after they're gone, and for future generations to learn from, to be inspired from, all those things. So that leads us to Magda Priest. And first of all, is she living today?
She's not, and actually to correct from earlier, we actually did not have the opportunity to interview her, but she was very proactive and she wrote the entire book herself. So
amazing.
That certainly helped our work.
Okay, so let's talk about Magda Priest. This is just a mind-blowing story. Tell us the story.
It really, mind-blowing is a great way to describe it. So Magda actually was the mother of my next door neighbors growing up, and I believe that maybe with us here. And I, as a young kid, saw this kind of ancient woman with stark white hair get out of a Cadillac. She must have been in her 80s or 90s by this point. Get out of a Cadillac at the end of the driveway and walk up. And this just kind of goes to show that you have no idea what the person right in front of you, what kind of story they have, because I never knew until 2018, years, 5 to 10 years after she passed.
Wow.
So where to begin?
Well, let's start with the name of the book. Let's start there.
So the name of the book is We Were Strangers, the story of Magda Price. And there is a little bit of an ambiguity right away that persists, and I'll try to avoid any spoiler alerts, but the author is actually Magda Riederman Schloss. So this is Magda Price.
Okay.
The woman, the very young woman that survived Auschwitz and a number of other camps was Magda Price. And there's a whole story behind that I'll get into, but the name change would suggest that there there was more drama, and really her survival was really the beginning of the story rather than the end. So the final page of this book, and certainly her son Billy would attest to this, is really the beginning. And I think that's true of a lot of survivors. It's a total misconception that you survive and that's the victory. So Magda, her family, growing up in Budapest in Hungary, her family saw the writing on the wall in the 30s, and they all left for America. But Magda, who is, and this comes across on every page, she's a character. She is a very intelligent, dramatic, creative, very cultured, very talented, spoke maybe 10 languages, 5 to 10 languages, just extremely dynamic woman. And so it wouldn't surprise you that when her family says, we're going to leave for America because things are getting too bad here, she said, well, I'm in love with Gustav, and I'm going to marry Gustav, and I'm staying. And so her family escaped, and she didn't. And she went through the absolute worst of it. She went to several camps, including Auschwitz. And the title "We Were Strangers," just to give a little background, and that's not the title she gave to it. Actually, it was untitled. We received it, but the concept, and we cite in our epigraph these lines from the Old Testament, that you shall treat strangers well because we were strangers in the land of Egypt. And maybe without knowing it, this theme of strangers and estrangement and strangeness pervades the entire book. And that comes across in a lot of different ways. All of a sudden, you were a Hungarian citizen. All of a sudden, you're a stranger in your own land.
Right.
You were with your family. Now you're estranged from them. In all these ways that strangers both kind of don't treat each other so well in the camps, but also there's moments where absolute strangers show a kind of humanity that is unbelievable, that you would risk your own life for a stranger. But without spoiling anything, to my point earlier that survival is really the beginning of the story. Magda does reunite with her husband, Gustav, and her family, but there is a sense of happy ever after, not being so clean and simple as Hollywood or a novelist might have it. So there's this sort of cloud hanging over the happy ending of the story, that she does survive and lives to tell the tale, but that she no longer can relate to the people that were closest to her, because they both and they have gone through their own separate journeys in a way that you really can't ever reverse. And
Right. Well, I think so many survivors talk about when you've seen some of the things that they have seen, and you aren't experiencing that with another person, how can you ever relate in the same way that you did before? And not that they couldn't be together again, but it's hard to fathom. It's hard for us, I think, to fathom what people who actually survived the camps went through. And she in particular, and I hope I'm not spoiling anything, this is a woman who survived multiple camps and was actually able to do so because she had a position. She was given some work to do, and how she was able to take that work and help other people. without compromising, without herself getting caught and killed is just extraordinary. Am I spoiling anything? I don't want to. Okay.
No, no,
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I mean, that's the part that just blew me away. Um, you know, my husband was asking this morning a question that I thought was very interesting, and I think I would love for you to unpack for our audience. And that's he said, well, so she was working for the Nazis. And I said, no, 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 she wasn't. And so how can you help the readers distinguish the difference between what she was able to accomplish and what some other inmates weren't able to accomplish?
Yeah, it's a really profound and difficult question, and I think is encapsulated by your great recurring question, would you hide me? I think is very much related to this. But so Magda, I think one of the things that saved her. We've asked a lot of survivors what do you attribute your survival, and a lot of them say luck, and it may come down to that. As Primo Levi says in his book, that it's not like a matter of the strongest that will survive. It's in a lot of cases it's kind of chance occurrence. So Magda was placed after some time in Canada, which Holocaust survivors may be familiar with as a part of the camp in Auschwitz. That was it would not be accurate to say easier to survive, but it was not hard labor. Her job for some time was to basically inventory the clothes that were stripped off of incoming inmates, incoming prisoners, and to sort of catalog their belongings. And there's scenes where she finds food in people's pockets, food or pills, and she's just everything that she can do to survive day by day. And being in Canada, of course, when she and her friends hear that they're moving to Canada, they're like, how could that possibly be? Canada's on the other side of the world. And so it's certainly not this kind of dream world, but there are certain opportunities, as you say, to help fellow inmates because there are, along with all the belongings that are being stripped of the newcomers are things that are highly coveted in Auschwitz. So cigarettes, jewelry, and Magda was able to use those to help others and to help herself. But to this question, this great question, is that a betrayal? One of the most powerful lines for me in Magda's book is when she says that there's no that hunger knows no morals. That she knew women that were sleeping with Nazi officers for a piece of bread, and had a song in the camp, all around a refrain of all the ways that you would debase yourself for a piece of bread. And I think that really sums it up, that when it's a matter of survival, it's very difficult to speak about morality in the sort of terms that we might want to.
Right. I'm guessing perhaps you might have read Herta Mueller's extraordinary book, The Hunger Angel. Oh my gosh. Okay. Because you're so prolific and you're such a literary person, it's a prose poem, honestly, and it's written in German. It's been translated by a magnificent translator named Philip Bohm. But she talks exactly about that. It is Russian prisoners after the war, and what is so horrific about what happened to them in their own country. And it's after the war, but hunger knows no bounds. And she's I mean, she is a one of a kind, extraordinary human being, and how wonderful for you that you got to birth this book. You are the co-editor, you are the publisher, and I can only imagine what it felt like when you started to read through her writings to discover what you had in your hands. It's gold mine.
Absolutely unbelievable and unexpected. You alluded to the story behind the story, which is printed in front of the book. With so many kind of chance occurrences that even if you're not a metaphysical person, metaphysical minded person, you have to wonder if there's something that's not dreamt of in our philosophy, that some kind of moving force that brought this book to the world. So as the uh, very brilliant art historian and Holocaust scholar, who was kind enough to introduce us, and you'll be speaking with.
She's here, Alyssa Shapiro. Thank you, thank you.
Shapiro, and I may not be getting these facts exactly right, so I'm going to need to be fact checked. But hopefully this will get the point across. Alyssa Shapiro helped us understand why this book is so rare, in addition to the language and the story just being mind-blowing. But there have been roughly 12,000 memoirs written by survivors since liberation, and of these, only 200 or so were written by women, and less than 10 were written in the 5 years immediately after the war. And I've had some interesting conversations with Alyssa on why publishers may have not been interested or willing to publish this completed manuscript in the 1940s. It was ready to be shared with the world, but American audiences may not have had an appetite for Holocaust memoirs.
Wow.
And as a story of a female survivor, which the numbers show is quite rare, this testimony, Magda in a lot of ways is quite graphic or really just honest about her experience as a woman in Auschwitz, and that's an experience different from reading testimonies written by men. There's for reasons that you can imagine, just and that just makes this story even more, as kind of
Yes.
makes it even more profound. But
Of course. What language did she pen it in?
she dictated it actually in English.
She did it in English. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's amazing. I mean, 5 years after the war that she had that command, the English language, that's profound in and of itself.
Yeah.
Beautifully written.
Yeah, she was a polyglot. I think she spoke English more or less fluently before the war.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that would make sense. What do you think was the one thing, as you were editing and preparing to publish it, what was the one thing about it that surprised you the most?
That's a great question. Well, the survival of the manuscript was one of the things that surprised me from the beginning. That it's almost as remarkable as Magda's survival. This story, after she had shopped it around with publishers and been rejected and sort of forgotten about it, moved on, was in the proverbial attic for 80 years or so, 70, 80 years. And it went from one form to another, from these typewritten pages that were moldering and yellowed and disintegrating to a floppy disk that then was filled with viruses. And the potential for this story to have been lost forever was quite significant. So that was one of the first things, that this is even intact and here and has now surfaced. But I think that Magda's own son knew that there was a profound story here, but didn't know the full treasure from a publication standpoint, from a literary perspective. Is this a good story? And that that was really, from the moment I touched this manuscript, my brother and I were just mesmerized by her not just her language, but her way of thinking, which is to be emulated. But one of the things that surprised me in a sort of more unfortunate way, or didn't surprise me, but well, the pandemic surprised us all, of course.
Mm-hmm.
That was right around the time that Magda's book was entering the world, and I think many books, many everything had trouble kind of reaching people during early days of the pandemic, but especially stories like this, which are not, you know, in some ways they are uplifting and inspiring, but they're also very heavy and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when people are experiencing darkness in their own lives, a Holocaust memoir may not be the first thing you read.
Yeah, you think? Yeah.
So, but one of the things that surprised me, I guess, is that people were still willing to engage with this story, and it goes back to the now cliche, if not now, when. Is there ever a good time? Is there ever a time where you feel like reading Holocaust literature?
Right.
And so, if not, then it's always a good time.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. And we do turn to comedy and humor and all these things when we're feeling so dark. But I think, if anything, the pandemic has offered to so many people the opportunity to really look inward and really examine our lives, and what are we going to leave? Like, at any moment, any one of us, any age, any athleticism or health, this thing can take you out. And it's, I think we're all still kind of like, nice to see you, turn the other way. And, or at least my generation is experiencing it that way. And I wonder what other pieces of art are going to be coming out of this entire experience. But for those who can sit back and really take in what she has to say, it is incredibly positive. And unfortunately, the time couldn't be more perfect right now, because unfortunately, as the human race, we need to be reminded again about how close a democracy can come to failing and turning into something that none of us would have expected. I certainly never thought I would be making the movie that I'm making right now in this moment in history. I mean, I just thought, okay, this is a story that I have to tell, and it's got to be done. Never did I think we'd be walking into anything like the insurrection and people being so blatantly racist, and having such, I mean, just the audacity to be signaling some of the messages that they're putting out there, and from clothing to what they're saying. It's just, it's staggering to me. And yet I know that my cousin Sargon would be saying, well, would you rather have rats in the walls or out on the floor so you can see them? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a great perspective, and I think there may be some upside to having them leave the walls and to know the very real threats that have never gone away.
Right.
Magda knew, and Magda warned her son that not only will this happen again, but very well maybe in your lifetime. And it's one of those things that the never again. Talking to a lot of survivors and asking them if that is a viable call to arms, if that's a reality, or just something that we should always strive for, but will never reach. It's not so much never again as kind of it's always already, in a sense, and so to books like this help us avoid complacency and thinking that
Mm-hmm.
that the past is the past and the Holocaust is ancient history, because it's not.
Right. Very, very true. So what is next for you?
Well, Thank you for asking. Well, we just wrote our own. My brother and I wrote our own memoir, which is the story of the stories that we've told and how we've created a business around something as difficult to start a business around as stories, you would think. And so the book marks a sort of transition in our business from working on a very intimate relationship base with families and institutions from what our goal all along has been to create something that makes this power that we have, everything we learned in 3 years and centuries of study, combining that into a platform that will allow people to do this, to do what we do, but without us, to remove ourselves from the equation and to give people the power to tell their own stories and be the authors of their own lives, which is from a business perspective and a philosophical perspective is very important to us. So that's what's next for us. We are we're hard at work creating this and excited to share it with the world.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, one thing about Instagram Live is that it's short, and I feel like I have so many more questions. I'm sure the audience does too. But we'll just have to do this again. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that at 2:00 today, people can rewatch it right away here on Instagram, but then it'll go over to our playlist on our YouTube channel, which is called Beth Lane's Film, and that'll get uploaded around 2:00 today, or at least 2:00 Pacific Standard Time today, so that people can rewatch it and learn more about what you and your brother are doing with Biograph and this incredible book, We Were Strangers, is something that I hope people really gravitate towards, and I wish you so much luck with it. It's just amazing. Really excellent, wonderful reading, and I hope more people get the chance to experience it. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much, Beth. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and I would be honored anytime to return. And
Awesome. Good. Thank you so much, Aaron. Have an amazing afternoon. I just want to thank the audience for being here. Thanks you guys so much. And let's see, what do we have on tap? Tomorrow night, the extraordinary Alyssa Shapiro is hosting what we call a Zoom saloon. You can go to our link in the bio, and there's a link tree there, and you can register for the Zoom that Alyssa's hosting. We will be talking about Would You Hide Me and all the ways that you can engage and participate, and we'll share the story about it. And it's just kind of one of these incredible nights that I think only, as Alyssa's cousin said last week when she was interviewed on Banter with Beth, there is no party like an Alyssa party. So please register and join us. And then next Wednesday, Pamela Weiler-Grayson is hosting a Zoom saloon on the East Coast, and you can go to the link tree here and register for that one. It will be the same format of Zoom saloon, but with a different host, different cast of characters, so different questions, and there's always a different vibe. And then the next night on the 25th, Carol and Doug Mancino here in Los Angeles will be hosting a Zoom saloon. So lots of really, really cool things. And then I think we're walking into March, right? March 2nd, I think, is a Wednesday. It's either March 2nd or 3rd, but our next Banter with Beth will be with the extraordinary artist David Casson, who I think I see here today, which I'm so excited about. But oh my gosh, his artwork will blow your mind. So check it out. Visit us at wouldyouhideme.com or bethlane.com, and subscribe here, hit the like button, all those things that we have to do on Instagram and social media. And thanks so much for showing up, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, bye.